It's Coast to Coast presented by CampusCanton.com. We are absolutely loaded for you tonight, covering everything in week one of college football. But I need you to do two things for me. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so that you can know every time we go live for Coast to Coast, Saturday nights, and then the tailgate in the morning. Do that, and then also jump in the chat right here and tell us where you are watching from. Let's start how we start every week here on Coast to Coast with the rundown. Brandon Hay, come in here. We just finished Georgia, Clemson. Brandon, what were your takeaways from this game from a fantasy perspective in a game that was not a lot of offense?
Right. Both teams have really good defenses, but I think the offenses struggled. On Clemson's side, their offensive line, their struggles last year with Trevor Lawrence, and it continued this year for the first game. Georgia was blitzing up the middle, and DJU just did not have time, and the receivers were not getting separation very much. They got a couple big plays, but throwing a lot of short passes. They couldn't run the ball, so they only had, I believe, eight carries to the running backs, and none of them really got going. And I was surprised they didn't try to throw more short passes to Will Shipley. So that was a little worrisome, but hoping since he's a freshman, they'll get him more involved. And on the Georgia side, with all their injuries, they decided to include the tight ends a lot more in this game, and they were successful on that. But it was a ugly offensive game. You know, the only touchdown was a pick six. So I think it would be hard to trust anyone on Georgia's offense right now, especially how they rotate the running backs. And it seems like it's a pretty even split how they're doing that with three of their running backs. So I wouldn't necessarily trust that. And on the Clemson side, I think DJU will get better. I thought he would start out slow tonight. I did not imagine this slow and struggle this much. But I think he will get it going. I think they'll get the offense going. But it definitely was a struggle for both teams tonight.
No Darnell Washington, no Eric Gilbert, and Brock Bowers targeted early and often for Georgia. And then DJ Uiagalelei sacked 7 times. He was frustrated all evening. If you're looking for the wide receiver who was going to emerge from that loaded core, it looks like it's going to be Justin Ross. They attempted to target him early and often. Brandon, thank you. We will come back to you. Austin, let's get in here. Earlier, we saw the debut of Bryce Young, and he looked very good. In fact, he set the record for passing yards by a first-time starter for Alabama.
I was a little bit worried after watching their spring game that Bryce Young would start off a little slower today. He made some questionable decisions, I guess, in that game. Looks like Saban had him calm, ready to go. And it's not like he wasn't a high-end prospect in his own right. The kid was a 5-star coming out of high school. He was up there in everybody's rankings with DJU. So we shouldn't be surprised at the big day he had there. 344 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. They took their foot off the gas pedal there. I think they could have just continued to do whatever they wanted there in the passing game. Some interesting splits amongst the receivers. Jamison Williams had himself the biggest day of the group, although a lot of that can be attributed to that 94-yard touchdown that he caught. Beyond that, 3 for 30-ish. So he might be a big play dependent guy for fantasy purposes. Obviously, then, with the speed can potentially be something as an NFL guy further down the line. Beyond him, John Mechie, the guy that we thought would lead them in receiving today, had led them in receptions, 6 for 76, had the touchdown on the opening drive, a nice dive at the pylon for a score. Some interesting names behind him, though. We knew Jaleel Billingsley was probably in the doghouse. Nick Saban has repeatedly said this offseason that he has not been doing the things he needs to do to be successful there at Alabama. Cameron Latu slid right in there and caught 2 touchdowns. He is going to be a red zone guy, probably almost exclusively for them. 3 catches, 2 of them touchdowns. But the tight end landscape, there's not a lot of high scoring guys in college, so could be worth something down the line there. I think he's probably worth a look if maybe your tight end situation isn't ideal. Slade Bolden, JoJo Earl, Javon Baker. These guys all kind of chipped in. The game got out of hand early. The one thing I will say about Bama today that I didn't love is just they split those touches between the running backs so evenly. Hopefully that does not continue. It's going to give us a headache for fantasy purposes here this entire season if they keep it up. Brian Robinson got the start, 12 carries, 60 yards. Trey Sanders, we weren't sure exactly what he looked like. He looked solid, 8 for 41 and a touchdown. Jace McClellan got 9 carries. Roydell Williams got 6 carries. So, I mean, they really split that backfield. Hopefully one guy can emerge, or, maybe there will be some bigger days ahead on the ground there where some of these guys can be fantasy relevant for us. On the flip side of that, Miami. I think a lot of us said all week, this Miami team, I just don't think they're very good. Derek King coming back from that knee injury, he is a guy that relies on his legs. I think he looked a little hesitant to run there early, and he's just not a good enough passer to just be a pocket passing kind of guy. He completed 23 for 30 today, but only 179 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. 9 carries for 10 yards. The thing about him is because he tries to run, he takes away a lot of opportunity from those running backs. And because he's not a great passer, he doesn't elevate any of the wide receivers. He's kind of just a vacuum for fantasy purposes. So I'm not comfortable starting any Hurricanes until I can see something different beyond De'Ara King this season.
I think if anything, you got to say that Bryce Young is good. Jaleel Billingsley is absolutely in the doghouse. This could be a potential buying opportunity for a player that none of us at Campus to Canton really thought was an NFL prospect, given that he's a very, very light player. But Austin, thank you. We're going to come back to you obviously later in the show. Matt Bruning, Texas and Louisiana. This one was as close as we thought it would be. Louisiana is a veteran team, and they almost had Texas's number today.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. It's score is 20 points away, and I don't think that it even ever really looked that close. Chris Smith was really the only player, in my opinion, that stood out for Louisiana. 11 carries for 55 yards and 1 touchdown. He did add 4 receptions for 19 yards. What I took away was Texas. We were all worried about what this team would look like. Sark coming over here, we were hoping that this offense would look really good, but we all talked about this could be a slip-up game for them. They could start out the season 0-1, and then what would that do for Texas? And they didn't. Hudson Card, I think, looked good for most of the game. He missed some throws early, but settled in. He tossed 2 touchdowns in the first half, ended up 14 for 21, 224 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Austin's guy, Bijan, was just an absolute beast. He took over this game. This was the Bijan game. 20 carries for 103 yards, a 5.2 average with 1 touchdown. He added 4 receptions for 73 yards and a touchdown. First touchdown of the season came on that catch. However, I was a little worried midway through the fourth quarter. He got tackled kind of awkwardly and landed awkwardly by 2 players. He limped off the field. Nothing has been announced on the injury, but he did not come back in. But Roschon Johnson looked a little bit okay earlier in the game and for him when he came out. Some quick notes on the receiving core as well. Whittington seemed to be the main target for Card in this one, 7 receptions for 113 yards and a touchdown. And Xavier Worthy looked really good. He's kind of been the talk of the C2C community. Looked really good on those punt returns and kickoffs, so I wouldn't be surprised if he starts to work his way into that receiving rotation.
I think the community, the NFL draft community is starting to realize that Bijan Robinson is absolutely one of the best players in the 2023 class, and in all likelihood, the best running back in college football. Maybe that's something that Pro Football Focus can catch up with now. Matt, of course, we will come back to you later in the show. Kevin Coltman appearing here from the West Coast. Kevin, Penn State, Wisconsin. This game was ugly, but there are a couple of players in this game that we wanted to keep an eye on. Of course, Jahan Dotson, Parker Washington. Graham Mertz is still someone that I believe in. What did this game look like from a fantasy perspective?
Yeah, on the show sheet I put, this is a game that you have to watch when you go to hell. The first half was bad. It was tough to watch out there. Defensively, it was there. Offensively, on the next side, Sean Clifford kind of bounced back in that second half. He finished with 247 yards and a touchdown. But, to me, Noah Kane only had 8 carries for 48 yards and a touchdown. So you saw that there. I think the bigger story is Kevon Lee. I know some people are touting him as being kind of the next running back and the guy they wanted over Kane. And he had 3 attempts for -4 yards, and he couldn't get it going. So I think, he was getting drafted kind of higher than I expected in a lot of drafts this summer. So that's something to keep an eye on there. But hey, Jahan Dotson looks like he's the real deal. Second round draft capital is kind of what I think his ceiling is. He had 5 receptions, 102 yards, and a touchdown. And he looked good. Parker Washington had 4 catches, 47 yards. He had some highlights, but those two guys, I think Dotson really set himself up well against a tough Wisconsin team at Wisconsin, and it looked good. It was a good game. Wisconsin on the other side, there's really no one there. I mean, Mertz, he had 185 yards, he had no interception, he did, but he just didn't look very good. Ches Maluzzi's there. He had 31 carries. Obviously, Berger's hurt right now, so I feel like when he gets in, he'll get that volume that we're going to see there. So from a fantasy perspective, I don't see any of those guys being relevant. But Penn State, I think Jahan Dotson's the guy that you want. And after that, it's kind of just it's there. This game was really bad. I watched this game for the show, but you guys need to pay me more for this because it was an awful first half. Second half was better. Kayvon Lee, though, I think is the big thing. I think people just overdrafted him.
All right, we're going to wait another week for the Theo Johnson breakout game.
Yeah.
Then I guess this one was a defensive struggle. All right, let's bring in Nick Whalen. Nick Whalen, analyst, Dynasty Trades, Calculator Podcast, Dynasty Nerds Film Room, where he's my co-host. You can find him at _ Nick Whalen. Nick, I wanted to bring you on because I wanted to talk a little bit more about this Georgia-Clemson game, a game that everyone was paying attention to. In an ugly game like this, is there anything that you can take away as an evaluator from, say, JT Daniels, who some are considering to be a potential first-round draft pick, had less than 150 yards passing tonight, or DJ Uiagalelei, who was frustrated, sacked 7 times? But is there anything that you can take away from our skill position players from a game like this tonight?
Well, just quarterback-wise, I think the most important trait you're always looking for is mental processing. And we saw it, 2 very different quarterbacks handling it. It's, what's the pre-snap read? What's the front? Where are they going to blitz from? You have to anticipate. And then post-snap, obviously they stunt and they move around and they adjust coverages. And we saw JT Daniels, I think, was fairly calm. He was processing. He was making good decisions. He made one bad decision, which I thought was actually great coverage. They disguised that well. But other than that, his throws were safe. I think there was a wrong route run in the end zone, and that was a touchdown to the tight end. If he missed, it was outside. Only his receiver was going to get it. But then you saw DJU, and it was a lot of panic. Even some of the completions he had was off the back foot. He always rolled to the right. I think there were some things that Clemson could have done offensively calling the game that would have made that easier on him. But in the end, it's one game. I know we want this big reaction, but we have such a small sample size with DJ right now. And we need to remember he's still growing as a quarterback. So right now he's not processing. I think that's the number one thing we need to look for. If he has an easy opponent, it doesn't matter what the stats are. How is he processing blitzes and split-second decisions and pre-snap reads? So that's the thing I'm going to take away. I took away Daniels was pretty prepared, and DJU was not prepared with mental processing.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of a disappointing performance from both of them there. For the running backs in this game, especially on Georgia, they have that huge stable of guys. We were kind of curious how that split would shake out. Zamir White had the majority of the carries there, 13 for 74. Kendall Milton chipped in with 6 for 27. James Cook had 5 carries. A bunch of guys got in there. Anything you took away from those guys tonight?
Yeah, I was more impressed than I thought I would be. I know, Felix, you've been talking up Zamir White. So, I was like, okay, I want to watch him mainly just so when we talk. But I was impressed. I saw a little bit more burst out of his game. And even with running backs, there's mental processing with cutting and not rushing cutbacks and things like that. And I thought he looked really mature. I think he looks healthy. He ran hard. Late in the game there when he had that run to ice the game, the ball moved. If you want to see the points weren't where the point should be, but he didn't fumble. But I thought he looked really good. He looks like a guy, I think that's a day 2 pick. Kendall Milton, I think, has gotten the most hype from Georgia in terms of this young up-and-coming stud. And I thought he looked powerful, but I thought that he used his power too much. I think that he should have avoided more often. He would have gotten more yards. And Cook kind of is what he is. He's this kind of third down change of pace guy, which he had some smart runs there to ice the game. I love that sugar huddle that they did. It threw Clemson off. It was perfect. And McIntosh only got a couple of touches, so we couldn't really evaluate him, I don't think.
So James Cook won't be his brother? Is that he won't be Dalvin Cook? We can take that away at least.
Yeah, do you remember those quotes when he was like, "I'm better than my brother," and yeah, he's not going to be.
No.
He's going to have a role at the next level, though, I believe. Let me ask you about his teammate, though, Nick. JT Daniels, the 5-star, started at USC, transferred to Georgia after Keaton Slovis takes the job there. If he's going to be a first-round quarterback, which some are projecting him as, where does he need to improve?
Yeah, I mean, for him to be a first-round quarterback, in my mind, at best, he'd be a mid to late first-round pick. But he needs to start hitting on some of these deep shots. I know with no George Pickens, that really hurts them. But he needs to utilize the matchups when he has them and connect on those downfield shots. I know, in my opinion, in that second half, they played really conservatively. They weren't going to take chances. They were going to make Clemson beat them, and Clemson couldn't do it. Even when they took a shot on that second to last drive, I believe, down the sideline, it was either my receiver is going to catch it or nobody is. And I get it, to win the game. But if you want to be a first-round pick, you need to show that you can lead a team to a victory and not just manage a team, which is where he's at right now.
Nick Whalen, Dynasty Trades Calculator Podcast, Dynasty Nerds Film Room. You can find him at _Nick Whalen on Twitter. Nick, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
You too.
Let's bring in the whole crew here. To discuss whose value saw the biggest change. I mean, lots of action going on in all around the country in week one today. Austin, let me throw this up to you. We're talking whose value saw the biggest change today in Campus Canton.
Yeah, we did this a little bit last week, guys. Obviously, a lot more games to choose from this week, so maybe we all have more than one answer. But let's go to Brandon first here. Brandon, who do you think helped their stock the most today? We'll start there.
Right, yeah. So I would say definitely Blake Corum for Michigan. I know he was a big value last year. A lot of people were expecting him to kind of take over that backfield, and they finally seems to have a scheme and got him the ball in space, and you could show his speed. He saw that, and he had a nice kick return. He had a couple touchdowns, and also Talia for Maryland. He had over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against a very good defense, and that was good to see. No interceptions, because that was his biggest thing last year. He had 2 games where he had 3 touchdowns, and then 2 games where he had 3 interceptions. So it was good to see him have better decision making.
Yeah, Matt, who do you have today as a guy that probably helped their stock the most?
I mean, I've got to start with my guy, Michael Pratt, right? I mean, we talked about him on the tailgate. I said you needed to start him. He was going to go out and have a good day. 296 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 34 yards rushing with a touchdown as well against probably the second best defense he's going to see all year. They do play Cincinnati later in the year. I would say Cincinnati has a better defense than Oklahoma. Outside of that, they don't have really any hard games on their schedule. He was, I believe, a top 20 option in CFF last year. People may have been worried about that with obviously the COVID season. Was that really going to hold up just based off a 1-game sample size? I would say it absolutely is going to hold up with the way he played. So I think Michael Pratt through the roof. And then Ben Eby over here in the comments. What's up, Ben? Anthony Richardson. I'm with you, bud. I love it because Emory Jones, just stocked down. And that's a major win for me in my bet. So Anthony Richardson, though, and Felix's guy as well. He looked good coming in for Florida and taking over for Emory Jones at times in that game against FAU.
Well, the correct answer here is Jake Haener. And Jake Haener continues to put performances like this together. He is going to be a quarterback drafted on day 2 with some expectation that he contributes to that NFL team. Everyone here was considering that Oregon defense to be a defense that he just could not perform against. And he played very well today, nearly led them to the victory. And the thing that we don't give Jake Haener enough credit for is just doing what is asked of him and not turning the ball over. No, he doesn't take shots every single time. Yes, he throws a lot of underneath and intermediate stuff, but he makes good decisions, and he can improvise. Austin, I know that you've always questioned his athleticism. He had some plays today where he had to escape the pocket and make plays downfield, and he absolutely did it. Even if he is a 4th-round draft pick, I said it on Debbie Debate earlier this week. Jay Kaner, to me, is the Russell Wilson, is the Dak Prescott of this class, the quarterback that if he's taken in the 3rd or 4th round, I'm going to try to stash him on my dynasty teams because I think that he's talented enough to have an impact at the next level.
Yeah, I think those are all fair answers. A fun answer could be I think Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields helped their stock the most today, as we saw. These teams don't run themselves. DJU had a terrible day. CJ Stroud was questionable the other night. But how about Bryce Young for a serious answer? I know I talked a little bit about the Bama game earlier. I mean, talk about a kid that, obviously highly rated. We had expectations for him. I think he went out there and met and exceeded every single one of them today. Showed that this offense is probably not going to take a step backwards or very little. They've had some pretty good teams there over the past couple years. Bama is the best team that I've watched so far. I don't think that should come as a surprise to say that. But I think Bryce Young is a large part of the reason why. And to be honest, it's just looking like Bama's going to run for this thing again. I mean, if Bryce Young plays 75 to 80% of that at least every week, I don't think a lot of teams are going to be able to beat them. Go ahead.
And he didn't even run. He didn't even run the ball today. The last I looked, he had 1 run for 8 yards. I mean, that's Bryce Young is a player who can absolutely run for 100 yards in a game, and he didn't even need it today. He was very efficient. He used his speed on the outside. Jamison Williams going to Alabama is going to change things for him. He adds an element that John Mechie doesn't in that speed. No, if you are in Campus Canton leagues, I don't think anyone's sitting Jamison Williams anymore. I don't think anyone is. So Jamison Williams also has to be considered in this conversation.
So I actually want to ask you about that, Felix. I know you can play the take out the big game for anybody and make somebody look stupid. But is Jamison Williams' fantasy value? I'm not talking about him as a pro prospect. I know you've always liked him as a pro prospect. His fantasy value, if it revolves around a big play like that, he's not going to have a 94-yard touchdown every single week, is he?
I mean, why is he not the Will Fuller of college fantasy football? I don't know if he is, but I don't want to sit him and leave, that 2 for 150 on the bench. So I mean, if you have a stable of receivers and you've got somebody like Jaden Wally or Jalen Tolbert or somebody who's going to be stable, the boom bust of Jamison Williams, you should absolutely have that starting in your lineup. That's just me.
Looking forward to playing you in some of our leagues this year then. So a lot of guys that helped their stock here, guys. But the question here initially was whose value saw the biggest change. Some guys probably had to drop. Do we have, Matt, I'll come to you here first. Anybody stand out to you right off the top of your head that just was not good today?
No, because I don't want to go based off 1 week. I mean, I know Rattler didn't play great. I think the biggest hit may have been, I think J-Wack, or maybe it was Ray tweeted this out earlier. I think the biggest hit we saw today was the 2022 draft, the quarterback draft class, with as bad as all those guys plays. Now, we haven't seen Carson Strong play yet. Malik Willis was okay. He was not as great as we thought he was going to be. He played okay. But Howell did not look good Friday night. Spencer Rattler did not look good earlier today. So I think those guys took the biggest hit. But it's not 2 guys that I'm really going to drastically change after 1 game. I want to give them a couple more weeks to see if this is going to be a consistent thing or if it was just first week back in the season. We talked about it, crowds back up, everybody's amped. Rattler just kind of made Rattler plays. I don't think he played horrible. He just kind of made some decisions that he shouldn't make, and we saw a lot of that last year as well. Howell was a little bit more concerning, if I was going to be honest.
Yeah, that Rattler line sounds very familiar. I think we've heard that one a few times before. Brandon, do you have a guy that hurt himself today?
Like Matt said, it's just 1 week, but we kind of brought it up with Florida, with Emory Jones. You saw some, he threw a really bad interception into the end zone, and that's been the biggest part of kind of evaluating him, his passing skills and everything. So I don't think that really made anyone feel better about that, and we'll have to see, going forward if he cleans some of that up.
Yeah, Felix, you have a guy?
I mean, other than Spencer Rattler, I think you have to consider the skill position players at Alabama who didn't play. So Ja'Cory Brooks, I'm still high on a Guy Hall. I was never really high on Brooks, but then Jaleel Billingsley. I mean, we thought that Jaleel Billingsley would be the cheat code in CFF formats this year, kind of, especially how he was used in the spring game. He's got to be one guy that you consider just his value really taking a hit today.
Yeah, and just I'm going to toss this name out as a guy that just did not see as much opportunity as maybe we thought he would, is Eric Gray at Oklahoma.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened there. I thought, I know they rotate their backs. I expected more out of him. Just, he just wasn't on the field as much as I thought he was going to be. So a bummer there. All right, guys, thank you all for hopping in here on this one. Let's send this over to Jarek, who has another By the Numbers segment here for us.
Understand the numbers. It's time to dive into the classroom with the beautiful mind of Jarek Backus and By the Numbers.
Thanks. Today I'm going to be looking at Breece Hall to see how he stacks up to the last two running back classes. Breece Hall is 6'1", 220 pounds, a prototypical size for an NFL RB. He's also a 4-star recruit, which means he has pedigree. Now, I could go on and on about all the awards he was nominated for, but let's stick to things that actually matter. I'm going to be looking at Breece Hall's 2020 season because for running backs and projecting to the NFL, the most important season is the one they did the best in. He earned 279 attempts for 1,573 yards and 21 touchdowns. Through the air, he had 23 receptions for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, earning him 334 PPR points for the season. That mark was good for number 7 in the 2020 and 21 class, behind Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, Chuba Hubbard, Travis Etienne, and CEH. Now keep in mind, this was his second year. These other players had 3 and even 4 years to hit that mark. His dominator rating, which is his share of the team's rushing and receiving work, was 38%, which is good for number 4 in the last 2 classes, behind Vaughn, Eno Benjamin, Chuba Hubbard, and Jonathan Taylor. His backfield dominator rating, which is his share of the backfield work, accounting for running back work only, was 84%, which is also number 4, behind Eno Benjamin, Chuba Hubbard, and Keyshawn Vaughn. His yards per team play, which is the number of yards he gained per team play, was 2.12, good for number 5, behind Hubbard, Taylor, Najee, Eno, and Moss. His reception share was 9%, behind Swift, CEH, Taylor, Akers, Najee, Etienne, and Javonte. Looking at all this data, Breece Hall stacks up very well compared to the last 2 running back classes. It seems he fits right in there. Now, he still has another year to improve his numbers. So, some questions to watch for this year. Does he step it up in the receiving game? He's behind a lot of the big names from the last 2 classes. I want to see him improve on that this year. Does he test well at the combine? I think one of his questions is his long speed. And is that going to negatively affect his draft capital if he's not fast enough? Now, the goal of this was to see how he stacked up with the last 2 running back classes. So here is how I would rank those classes with Breece Hall involved from a prospect perspective. Jonathan Taylor, number 1 overall. Then I'd have Akers, Swift, then Breece Hall, Dobbins, Etienne, Javonte Williams, Najee, and CEH. Now back to you.
Breece Hall was 23 for 69 tonight. He is going to have better days than he did today against Northern Iowa as Iowa State squeaks out a victory after being upset last year against Louisiana. Let's welcome in Kane Fossell to talk about from one backfield situation to another. Of course, he is the co-host of the Devy Marketplace. You can find him at Devy_Kane. And he's also a big-time Gophers fan. Kane, when you lose Muhammad Ibrahim, what does that mean for the team and the prospects for the Gophers for this season?
So I think there's two main things, right? The first is not only do you have to figure out what's going to happen with the rest of the team with the backfield, but then we also have to figure out how the offense is going to operate as a whole. So I'm going to start with the second question because I think that's really, really important. And that means that Tanner Morgan's going to have to throw on early downs more often, right? That has to be the overall idea of what has to happen more effectively for the Gophers. And I think that starts not with just Dylan Wright, but that also has to be Chris Hopman-Bell coming back healthy and Daniel Jackson all working as a threesome to make sure that they're actually moving the ball down the field, because we don't have anyone on our team as talented as Mohamed Ibrahim was.
Well, let's talk about his potential replacement, and that is Trayson Potts. We saw him before the injury line up in the slot, line up as returning punts for the Gophers. How excited should we be about Trayson Potts, given if he is that athletic where they're lining up at wide receiver and they're lining him up to return punts? He could be potentially a more all-purpose skill set than Ibrahim was. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, so I think that's worth a thought, right? The best thing that we can do now as the Gophers is making sure that we're utilizing Trayson Potts in a way to get matchups against linebackers, right? We talk about that when we're talking about NFL guys all the time. If you can get Christian McCaffrey or someone like that that's fast and can work in space against the linebacker, they're going to succeed. And the same idea happens in college, right? If you can just put Trayson Potts against linebackers, he's going to succeed in one-on-one coverage, right? But the issue between Trayson Potts and Mohamed Ibrahim is that Trayson Potts, as we saw kind of as the game progressed after Mohamed Ibrahim's injury, that he doesn't work as well in the inside zone game, right? We all know that the Gophers run a zone run scheme, and they mix up both inside zone and outside zone schemes, and Mohamed Ibrahim is terrific at both. But Trayson Potts needs to work outside, right? He's not as strong as Mohamed Ibrahim is, so we really have to focus on that, and I think things are going to really change a lot. So I was talking to a lot of guys that that are both coaches and things like that at the University of Minnesota. And the biggest thing that the consensus seems to be is not only is Trayson Potts going to be the one, but also the mix behind him is going to be really important and is going to be dependent on kind of the game plan, right? So if you're looking for more of a heavy inside the tackles run, you could be looking at a guy like Bryce Williams or something like that to get a few more carries. If the idea is to really spread the field, then maybe you're looking at a guy like Kai Thomas or Trayson Potts really getting more of a role. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. We don't have a clear picture as to what that's going to be, because the idea now is that the game plan is going to kind of change every week, because Mohamed Ibrahim isn't going to be able to be there and, handle 41 carries against Maryland like he did in the past.
Kane, I'm going to write a waiver wire column, and Trayson Potts has to be considered. I'm not sure what his ownership percentage is on Fantrax, but is he the type of player, if he's sitting on waiver wires, that you push all your chips in to acquire him?
That's the big question, right? For the first few weeks of the season, yes. Right. When Minnesota's kind of facing their non-conference schedule, which isn't super difficult when it comes to the run game. So for the first few weeks of the season, I think it's going to be really, really important. But after that, when we start to get into these Big Ten matchups, against Iowa, Wisconsin, things like that, where we're going to have to run the ball a lot and try to be effective on the ground, I don't think Trayson Potts is going to be able to do that unless they can really establish him as a true pass-catching running back, which is something that you haven't seen with Minnesota since, the Marion Barber era of the Gophers, which was, back when we were winning. So, there's a whole lot of questions as to what's going to happen with the team, but I think that's the best idea as to what people are letting me know right now.
Kane Fossell, you can find him on the Devi Marketplace with Shane Hallam. You can find him on Twitter at Devi_Kane. Kane, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, brother.
All right. Austin, am I throwing it to you? You and Kev
sure are.
Right,
you sure are.
Go ahead. I'll get out of here. You guys go ahead. Take it.
Good riddance. All right. How's it going tonight, Kevin? Thanks for joining us here again tonight. You are going to be doing a weekly segment here for us. Our West Coast, our left coast check-in. Sorry, should I say, since you live out there in California. So how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. It's only 8:48. I can watch more games. That's why the West Coast time zone is the best, and I will stand by that.
That's a good thing we don't have Felix in here to debate that with you then. Let's get into some of these games. We've got a bunch of them here tonight, actually, that are still either going on or yet to kick off. Let's go to LSU here first. They've taken on a UCLA team that looked really good last week. What's going on there at the Rose Bowl?
Yeah, LSU is down 11 right now with 7:39 left in the game, and it is 31-20. And UCLA has the ball too, and it just looks like it is insane to me how good UCLA's defense has done. Zach Charbonnet may be real. I know that you don't want to hear that, Austin, but 10 carries, 119 yards, and a touchdown. They also have Britton Brown, 14 carries, 78 yards, and a touchdown right now, and they're both just running it up LSU's defense, and that's hard to see from a Pac-12. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 215 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. So they look really good. Greg Dulcich had a long touchdown run. Keishawn Butte has 8 receptions, 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. But you know what? UCLA might be kind of for real. Maybe Chip's got it turned around there. And LSU, again, I talked about LSU on my Fantasy Pros article recently. Ed Orgeron, this is a huge Coach O for him for a season. He just replaced his offensive coordinator again. He replaced his defensive coordinator with a guy that hasn't been a real defensive coordinator since Bowie State. So there's a lot of question marks with that. And LSU looks like they're going to lose this game.
Yeah, a tough one there to start out for LSU there. And conversely, obviously, UCLA off to that nice 2-0 start. Nevada, Cal, two teams kicking off for the first time this weekend. Nevada, a hot name there in the Mountain West. Down right now, though, right?
Yeah, down right now, but Carson Strong just threw a touchdown pass. He's got 91 yards and a touchdown. It's 14-10 down, but they have the ball back, and this is going to be a good game, I think, all tonight. This is the game I'll be watching. I think Carson Strong's a top 3 QB of this class, at least top 4. So it'll be interesting to see what he has there. Romeo Dubes, I know everybody loves him. I probably pronounced his name wrong. He's got 4 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown already. So it looks great. And then Chase Garbers, he's got 80 yards and a touchdown. But this game's going to go back and forth. Looks like Nevada's clawing back here, and it's going to be a barn burner.
Yeah, two quarterbacks there leading the way in that battle. Will be interesting to see how that one ends up. A game with 2 quarterbacks that maybe we don't feel so good about. BYU against Arizona here. Bit of a slower game here. What are we looking at here with these 2 guys?
This is like the Wisconsin Penn State nightmare that I watched. But it's 6-0 right now. Arizona's got the ball. Arizona might be one of the worst teams in college football. Their offensive side of the ball, they got Gunnar Cruz out there, Will Plummer. They don't have anybody relevant on the offensive side or defensive side of the ball. BYU, Tyler Algier, I know people like him. He's got 8 carries, 52 yards, and a touchdown right now. So that's kind of where they're leaning towards. But again, the receiving crew is nothing there. It's 6-0 right now, and I would be surprised if they get over 30 points collectively on this game.
Yeah, not exactly an exciting one there. A game that has already ended, actually, a weird one for a West Coast to be over here. It's been over for a while. USC San Jose State. San Jose was thought to maybe be a trendy upset pick. Did not happen.
No, it didn't happen. I mean, I talked about this with Nick Starkle. I think people were talking him up last week, and I said, hey, they played Southern Utah. Like, let's chill. And then he came out, had 2 interceptions. Keaton Slovis looked okay. He just did what he needed to do, just throw it up to Drake London. Drake London had 12 catches, 137 yards. And I don't really know how to grade Drake London yet. He puts up the numbers, and you got to love that for C2C purposes. Taj Washington's a kid to watch. He had 4 catches, 56 yards, and a touchdown. I liked him. Keontae Ingram had 86 yards rushing. So USC looked good against San Jose State. It'll be interesting to see what happens after that. Slovis still, I'm not that high on Slovis, but they did what they needed to do, put away San Jose State. I think some people were betting San Jose State. If you bet San Jose State, I'm sorry tonight.
I won't name any names, but I know some people that may have done that. Another one here that a little bit of a slower game. We got Utah State and Washington State. As soon as I heard Jarek Guarantano was going to be the starter, I decided I would not pay any attention to this game. So Kevin, tell everybody how it's going, so the rest of us don't have to, please.
Yeah, it's 3-0 in this, or no, 3-3. Excuse me, you just got 3-3 in the second with 13 minutes to go. There's really nothing going on here. Our boy Max Borghi, though, Austin, he was going in the first round of Devy drafts and C2C drafts last year. He's got 4 carries, 1 yard. That's legit, 0.3 average. But after that, this game is going to be bad. I don't really see where this game's going to go. Utah State may pull it out, but I won't be checking in on this game. But it is crazy how far Max Borghi has really fell. Like, I saw him go at 105 last year in a C2C draft with legit people in it. It wasn't like, these random guys that just joined and don't know what they're doing. And he got drafted over Najee Harris. He was a running back 1 last year. And that is crazy to me that how far he's fallen. Now you shouldn't draft him at all.
Yeah, no receptions yet, which kind of stands out there. By this point with Mike Leach there, probably would have had 6 by the start of the second quarter already.
Yeah.
So that certainly hurts his value as well. Last game over there tonight has not kicked off yet. Just want to get some of your thoughts on this. Hawaii trying to rebound from the smackdown last week against UCLA, taking on Portland State. Tell us something about this game. I don't know anything about Portland State. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't know shit about Portland State, but what I can say about Hawaii is they have Todd Graham as their head coach, and Todd Graham is a terrible head coach. And I think a lot of people were drafting Chayvon Cordero and thinking like, hey, it's going to be the same offense. Obviously, Washington State's head coach, who I cannot remember his name off the top of my head. I just know he doesn't like vaccines. Chayvon, that guy, Chayvon Cordero. He had a bad game against UCLA. But hey, you know what? Looking at how good UCLA is playing right now against LSU, maybe that's not as bad as the loss that we all kind of like. Wow, I can't believe they didn't actually play a little bit better. I like Cordero though, but again, if you have Graham as your head coach, it's going to struggle offensively. They need to get Calvin Turner Jr. more involved, and I think they will. I think a lot of people probably started them tonight in C2C drafts or leagues, excuse me. But yeah, besides that, I don't see too big.
Yeah, Kevin, well, thank you for joining us again. You can find Kevin, co-host of the Devy Royale, Devy contributor over at Fantasy Pros, and a contributor here at Campus Canton with us as well, at DuBois_22 on Twitter. Kevin, thanks for checking in from the West Coast here with us.
Yeah, guys, appreciate it, and we'll check you guys later.
Felix is muted. There we go.
I'm not muted.
Oh, you were talking and nothing was happening there for a minute.
All right, let's. We're bringing in everybody here. Some other notes from this week. I mean, Matt Breen, I'm going to throw this to you first. Will Levis has a better day than Sean Clifford. 18 for 26, 367 yards, 4 touchdowns. Is Will Levis someone that you would consider, at least for fantasy purposes, and starting there for UK?
No. I want to see it for one more week. I think he should have. Oh, man, I spelled Clifford wrong, too. That sucks. I would, if I was Franklin, I would not have let Will Levis go. I think he is clearly the better talent than Sean Clifford. We've probably known that for the past couple of years that Sean Clifford just isn't it. Will Levis definitely looks like he would have been able to at least lead Penn State to a more convincing victory over Wisconsin. But he definitely looked good today. It's great for all of the Wan'Dale Robinson shares that we have. We were hoping he's a guy that I think still a lot of people hope can get that NFL draft capital. Having a guy like Levis getting him the ball, making him relevant looks good. But I think you're probably, if he's on the waiver wire, going to have to pick him up this week after the week he just had. But I don't know if I'm starting him just yet. I want to give it at least 1 to 2 more weeks before I really fully buy into Will Levis.
Austin, it's 1 week, but are you ready to admit that Will Levis is better than Sean Clifford?
Yeah, I need to see more than 1 week. Not a particularly difficult matchup today. Clifford played Wisconsin. I don't think Clifford's good. It's just a case of I just don't think Will Levis is good either. But I have been saying I like this Kentucky team this year. I like this Kentucky team. I think they can do some things. Got a nice defense, a really good offensive line. If Levis can be legit, if he does what he does today, I think Kentucky can be close to a top 10 team by the end of this season. I really, really do.
Brandon Hay, we continue to ignore the diminutive dynamo in Deuce Vaughn. He goes 13 for 124 and 1 and 2 for 12 receiving. Is it time to stop ignoring Deuce Vaughn?
I believe it is, because I especially thought Stanford would play better today. I actually thought Stanford would win this game, and it was never really that close. And he just keeps on producing. And I mean, we've seen players in the NFL, not a ton, but some smaller players like Darren Sproles, and Danny Woodhead. Some smaller players, have been successful there. So I think we need to start taking him more seriously at the next level.
No, I think that we need to start considering him as someone who could potentially be drafted on day 2, and if not early day 3. And I think that that's sufficient for a scat back who's going to be used the way he's going to be used. The thing is when players get their hands on Deuce Vaughn, he just goes to the ground. And so if he has an open lane, he can skirt through it, but he's not someone who's going to break tackles really at all. I did not check the score of the Georgia Tech game versus Northern Illinois. That game was close. Jeff Sims goes out for an injury, Austin, but he was 3 for 8 for 21 yards before then against a MAC team. I mean, just not looking very good. Is it time to be concerned if you're a Yellow Jackets fan?
I think it is, and I think this is going to be a situation, I'll call it now, that he does not get that job back. Jordan Yates, whether it's NIU did not have any tape on him or whatever, but just looked so much better. 12 for 19 on the day when he came in relief, 136 yards, a touchdown. I mean, Jeff Sims, I didn't expect him to look completely NFL ready, but he needed to look less lost than he did last year. He definitely was not comfortable really truly running an offense at times last year. Did not look great today. They've got some athletes, some talent, some weapons there. You just got to have somebody in that driver's seat who can kind of get the ball in their hands. We all love Jahmyr Gibbs, but they have some other backs there as well. People forget Jordan Mason, who was a pretty decent back before Gibbs got there, and he really was dinged up last year, barely played at all. And they've got some different receivers there as well. So I think that overall, if you can just get somebody in there to get them the ball and let them do some work, then I think Georgia Tech is better off for that. So I actually think we may have seen the last of Jeff Sims in a meaningful role there for the Yellow Jackets.
Jahmyr Gibbs still good. Pour one out for Alfred. Jahmyr Gibbs still good. Jeff Sims, in one of his 5 incompletions, was missing Jahmyr Gibbs and what would have been a touchdown on a wheel route. Matt Bruning, Auburn has a new head coach in Brian Harsin, and that means good news for Tank Bigsby. Is it good news for Bo Nix also?
I mean, it looked like it after week 1. I'm all in on the 101 hype train again for Bo Nix that started this offseason. Why not? I mean, he actually did go out there and have a good game, and that's not surprising, right? I mean, Harsin is, I think, had fairly good quarterbacks play throughout his entire coaching career from Boise State, now coming over here. I mean, Bo Nix was a highly rated recruit. It's not like he was horrible. Austin, me and you, I know we've talked about it, I'm pretty sure, on Debbie Debate, where Gus Malzahn really has never developed a quarterback. He gets credit for developing Cam Newton, but Cam Newton was pretty damn good before he came to Auburn, and he didn't really develop him any more than that. He's still kind of the same quarterback in the NFL that he was at Auburn, so he never really developed. So maybe that is what was holding Bo Nix back all this time. I still don't think he's going to be a first-round pick, but if he goes out there and continues to have a season like he did today, I mean, I don't have his stats in front of me. We only missed like 5 passes, right? I mean, he had a really good game. I know he had 3 touchdowns. I'm pretty sure over 200 yards passing, only missed a couple passes. If he can do that and they can compete, Auburn's going to be a good team. And I do think that his draft stock will raise.
Yeah. That's right. All right. I was not paying attention.
I mean, Tank Bigsby's still going to be the guy there, right? I mean, they're only going to go as far as he can go. He had a huge day. My super hot take, Tank Bigsby for Heisman, started off for decently today.
I almost tweeted at you. I was like, hey, what is it? The first carry he took to the house? I was like, Heisman, here he comes.
And Bo Nix has to be decent for that to happen. They got to win some games. They can't win 7 games, and ain't no one winning the Heisman on a 7-win team. So if Nix can do that, though, I mean, it's certainly within the realm of possibility.
All right. Any other games that we need to cover, guys?
Let's see here. I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but we've got does anybody want to go more in depth on the Tulane Oklahoma game? I talked a little bit about Pratt earlier.
Yeah, Michael Pratt is a CFF stud. I think it remains to be seen whether or not he has any NFL potential. I don't know that we know that yet. He is very much mistake prone, but he improved his mechanics last year. He's improved his mechanics. Last year, his mechanics were just weird. The way he stood up in the pocket on his tippy toes, his feet would be very close together. He looked more natural today for Tulane, and he runs the ball. I mean, he could potentially be a quarterback 1 or a very high end quarterback 2 in CFF league. So he has to be rostered, and you're probably starting him every week.
How about Super Mario, Felix? He got a touchdown today, much to Austin's chagrin.
Yeah, I think I still, he made a dent in that 475-yard bet that we had, that Austin and I have. So he's still got a little ways to go. I need him to have a few 100-yard games.
He had 37 yards receiving. Let's
he's almost below 400. We're getting there.
Dent, then okay.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Hey, he's got like 12 more games. You never know. Not at this pace. He's not going to get there, but you never know.
So I have a name that I want to toss out here that I think was an intriguing situation that developed from this game, and I tweeted about it. They put Caleb Williams in on the goal line, and he ran one in for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that we see that freshman Tim Tebow role for Caleb Williams at Oklahoma this year? Because Lincoln Riley will do anything. Like he'll integrate anybody in any which way into an offense. Could be a fun way to kind of mix things up there for them.
When you think about a quarterback running the ball changes the math because the quarterback's involved in the running game, and therefore you can have your maximum amount of blockers. And that's exactly what my coach. It's a boring play to call, but it is effective. And with a quarterback like Caleb Williams, who is his asset, I mean, he is an asset in the running game, and Cam Newton would be an adequate comparison for him. I think it makes sense strategically. I think it makes sense to develop him, to bring him on. These are easy situations, and he's going to excel there. We know that he can do a lot more, but getting his feet wet in that manner, no, I can absolutely see that. And speaking of Caleb Williams, I mean, he is absolutely a player who could win the Heisman in the next two seasons or so, just by scoring 50, 60 touchdowns. Rushing and throwing, because he's going to be used in that goal line area. So, no, I think it makes sense for them to use him that way, just strategically. It makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're going to have him keep doing like dives on the goal line and get in, and then say they get to the playoffs. I know Felix has been predicting them to go undefeated and make it into the playoffs. And then he just takes a step back and throws a pass to the little tight end thing that Tebow kind of became famous for. I mean, it's the perfect setup. Yeah, I mean, and Caleb Williams, we've all talked about it. He's a better athlete than Spencer Rattler. I think it opens up the playbook just a little bit more down there in the red zone as well. So I would not be surprised if he continues to use Caleb Williams when they get down there in the red zone and on the goal line.
Another game that I just want to ask you guys about, this Washington game. They played Montana today. It's 20th ranked Washington. They lost 13-7. Montana was not expected to be a particularly great team this year, I don't believe. Dylan Morris, 3 interceptions. None of the running backs did anything of note. Sam Hewer, do we see him this year? What are we thinking here?
In 2 weeks. I think they give him one more week, and then if Washington's bad again, I don't see why you don't just put Hewitt in there. Let the kid get his nose bloody.
You've got to give Morris enough rope there at least to finish that job off. So yeah.
I mean, it's a big upset. I didn't watch that game. I didn't realize that Washington actually lost. And so they take on Michigan next week. That's going to be a good game. No, I did not realize that Washington lost to Montana.
Well, let's stay on the let's stay on the freshman train here. Felix, as you didn't seem that impressed with the J.J. McCarthy not the touchdown throw, but the throw earlier that I tweeted out. I thought it was a pretty damn good pass. You were just kind of like, okay, whatever. Like you did not seem that excited about it.
I was impressed with it. He rolls to his right, throws all the way across the field back to the left and hits the guy in stride. It was an impressive throw. Michigan was impressive today. I thought that Western Michigan would actually give them a fairly decent game. It turned out not to be that way. And Caleb, none of their players actually had a good game, but no, it was impressive. I mean, we'll see if Jim Harbaugh can develop any sort of skill position players. You've got Dalen Johnson there. You've got A.J. Henning, obviously Blake Corum, and I didn't see how Donovan Edwards played today, but they keep getting very good recruits. But it's just a matter of developing those guys. And Blake Corum over 120 yards, I think today looked good. So we'll see.
Austin, are you out on Caleb Ellaby after that performance? It was kind of bad.
Yeah, he wasn't great. I think he did have a couple of really nice downfield throws though that he were dropped or whatnot. And they got some pretty consistent pressure on him all day. I think you would like to see. He's not that mobile. He's not the kind of guy that can single-handedly win you one of those games against a better opposition like that. Just because he does not have that element, and they were losing Sky Moore early. I think that probably submarined them. I am not out on Caleb Ellaby, at least not as a fantasy guy, because let's be honest, after he gets into the conference there, he's going to be playing the same teams he played last year and put up some big numbers. So not concerning to me there at all. Michigan with that big win today, I think bigger than any of us probably expected.
Can we go ahead and talk about next week's storylines? I mean, we got two really big games in Washington versus Michigan and Ohio State versus Oregon. Brandon, hey, I would assume that Michigan's going to be favored in this game. Are you confident that your Wolverines are going to take the W?
I sure hope so, because I'm actually going to be at the game next week. So I hope I don't go that far for a loss. But with how Washington played today, that gives me a little more confidence. And it looks like Michigan, the coaching hires they did this past year, seems like everyone's somewhat on the same page. Some of the game planning seemed to make more sense today. Obviously, it was an inferior, team where Michigan should win against Western Michigan. But I liked how it's trending, and it seems like they figured out how to do a better running back rotation. They really stuck with Haskins and Corum for most of the game when it was in doubt, and then threw in Donovan Edwards with McCarthy late in the third and fourth quarter.
And we got a treat in week 1 with Clemson, Georgia. We get another treat next week with Oregon and Ohio State. I mean, anyone can take this, but I got to think that Ohio State has to play better offensively than they did early on in that Minnesota game. And the same for Oregon. Oregon is going to have – this is probably going to be a defensive struggle, at least I perceive it that way, especially if a little less so if Kayvon Thibodeau is out. But that Oregon defense is good. How do you guys see this one playing out? I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair.
That game is going to be a treat in the way we thought that Georgia-Clemson game was going to be, and it ended up being like one of those, you think they're an Oreo filled with the regular cream and it's toothpaste. Somebody switched it out. Not so sweet.
Or mayo.
Right into it.
And mayo and Felix's mayo for Felix's choice there.
Felix likes some people eat mayo. Yes. I'm not sure. We'll see. Thibodeau, like you said, out is going to be probably out next week. They haven't released any information, but left the game in a boot. Not particularly exciting. If Stroud can calm down, which I think was part of the issue this week, I think that is Ohio State's game to lose. But we shall see.
Yeah, I agree with that. So last I saw, they were saying Thibodeau. I could have swore that. Now I can't remember his name. Oregon's head coach. Help me out.
Mario Cristobal.
Yeah, Cristobal said that it wasn't serious. So I don't know if that means he will play next week or not, but I think Ohio State has the offensive line to be able to slow up Thibodeau. Obviously, they won't stop him completely. Stroud, I agree with Austin. He's going to have to calm down. I think that Ryan Day is going to have to try and come up with and design some quicker throws. I feel like them trying to do the long stretching plays of giving Chris Olave 30 seconds, and not really 30 seconds being a little facetious there, but the 5-6 seconds to get open downfield for those huge touchdowns are not going to work against a team like Oregon. Now, they are missing some of their cornerbacks, I believe. They were out this game, likely going to miss next week as well. So that secondary that I thought might challenge Garrett Wilson and Olave won't be quite as strong. And then really, can Anthony Brown attack the Buckeyes secondary? Because that's clearly their weakness. They've got the players to do it. We saw Ibrahim kind of really beat up on the Buckeyes front line in this game. Now, CJ Verdell is not Ibrahim, but can he as well kind of put pressure on that Buckeyes offense by playing the time of possession game like Minnesota was doing for a lot of that game, just kind of running the ball, holding on to the clock, forcing CJ Stroud and them to try and beat them deep with those big play strikes. I agree with Austin. It's going to be a really good game. I am nervous. I said today on the tailgate that if they had played Oregon on Thursday night, Oregon would have won that game. They would not have let that get away like Minnesota did. So if CJ Stroud and that offense plays the way they did, I expect them to lose that game Saturday. I think it's early morning kickoff too. So that's the only thing maybe holds Oregon back. Was that like a 9 a.m. kickoff for them, but based on the body clock theory or whatever that's called?
Well, does CJ Stroud struggle again early, or does he take another step in his development? Can Michigan score points? We're going to find all of that out next week, and we'll be right here with you after the late games conclude, and we will take you from coast to coast. All right, good night, everyone.